For many, it was a rare opportunity to see a nationally known figure address issues of politics, culture, and free speech in the open air. The atmosphere was lively, but also tense. Whenever Kirk appeared, controversy often followed. Still, the crowd was packed, cell phones raised, voices echoing. A sea of faces turned toward the stage. What no one could see was the figure watching from above. On the rooftop of a nearby building, a young man lay in wait. Tyler Robinson, just 22 years old, had traveled more than 260 miles to be here. He carried with him a rifle, concealed and carefully hidden, yet now assembled and ready. Whether driven by ideology, rage, or some darker compulsion, he had chosen this moment, this place, and this man as his target. The shot came suddenly. A crack split the air, louder than the ambient noise of the crowd. Kirk fell to the ground, his hand reaching instinctively toward his neck. The courtyard erupted into chaos, screams, shouts, bodies rushing in every direction. Security and police scrambled toward the stage, but it was already too late. One bullet had ended the life of one of America's most polarizing young conservative leaders. Even in the chaos, investigators knew what they were facing. The precision of the shot, the location on the roof, the distance traveled by the shooter. This was no accident, no spontaneous outburst. This was an assassination. The campus was locked down. Helicopters circled overhead, and the FBI was called in almost immediately. Crime scene teams ascended to the rooftop. There, amid the dust and gravel, they found the first traces of evidence. A footprint pressed into the surface. A palm print near the ledge. Marks that suggested someone had been lying prone, lining up the shot. Every detail was documented, photographed, measured, collected. And near the roof, another discovery. A screwdriver, seemingly discarded, but now bagged and tagged as possible evidence. Forensic science would soon turn these fragments into a story. But in those first hours, investigators relied on another crucial tool, surveillance footage. Cameras positioned across campus had captured movement near the rooftop. A figure, wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses, was seen climbing and descending. His gait, his build, his mannerisms were frozen in digital clarity. The disguise was simple, but not effective enough. Those who knew him would recognize him. Within hours, the FBI released stills to the public. The images spread quickly, on news channels, on social media, on phones across Utah and beyond. And it was those closest to the suspect who noticed first. Tyler Robinson's own parents saw the images and recognized their son. Conflicted but resolute, they confronted him. According to officials, they helped persuade him to turn himself in, bringing the manhunt to a swift close. But before that surrender, Robinson had already left behind a trail that investigators were piecing together. In the woods near the campus, search teams found the rifle, wrapped, hidden, but not destroyed. With it was a towel, bearing traces of DNA. The weapon was matched to the single fatal shot that struck Kirk. The towel, along with the screwdriver from the roof, carried Robinson's genetic profile. His DNA, prosecutors would later say, was everywhere. This alone might have been enough to link him to the crime. But there was more. Messages sent in the hours and days surrounding the assassination painted a troubling picture. Investigators alleged that Robinson left a note declaring his intent to kill Kirk. In private texts to a partner, he confessed his actions and his reasoning. In online chats, he hinted at his satisfaction. These digital words became as damning as the forensic evidence. From the perspective of law enforcement, the case was as much about mistakes as it was about planning. Former federal agents would later describe Robinson's actions as sloppy, even naive. If he had truly wanted to escape justice, he might have destroyed the weapon, ditched it in a river or lake, erased his tracks. Instead, he carried it clumsily, hid it in a patch of woods, and left behind fingerprints, DNA, and video. For all the pre-operation planning he may have done, he left evidence at every turn. But sloppy or not, the attack had been devastatingly effective. Charlie Kirk was dead, and his death sent shockwaves through political and cultural circles across the United States. To supporters, he was a warrior for free speech and conservative values, silenced in his prime. To opponents, he had been a lightning rod for controversy, but few could condone the violence that ended his life. Across social media, across campuses, across the halls of government, the debate raged. What did this assassination mean for politics, for safety, for the nation's deepening divides? Back in Utah, the legal process began to take shape. Robinson was charged with aggravated murder. Prosecutors announced they would seek the death penalty, citing the premeditated and public nature of the crime. Court filings described the mountain of evidence: DNA, ballistics, surveillance, digital messages, witness statements, even the alleged confessions to family and friends. The defense pushed back, asking for time, noting the vast quantity of discovery they would need to review. Meanwhile, security experts turned their focus to the university itself. Why had such a high-profile event been held outdoors, in an open courtyard, without stronger protective measures? There had been no drones scanning rooftops, no extended perimeter checks, no coordination for aerial overwatch. In hindsight, it seemed a vulnerable setup, one exploited with deadly precision. In the months ahead, lawmakers and administrators would debate how to prevent such a tragedy from happening again. Yet even as those questions loomed, the investigation continued to yield insights. Forensic teams reconstructed Robinson's path, his travel from St. George to Orem, a journey of more than 265 miles. Along that drive, he had countless chances to abandon or destroy the rifle. Yet he chose instead to conceal it, later retrieving it for the attack. That decision, and the decision to hide it nearby rather than far away, became a key factor in how quickly investigators tied him to the crime. His digital trail was equally revealing. On his devices, investigators found notes and drafts that indicated a fixation on Kirk. In messages, he described his frustration, his reasoning, his sense of justification. To some recipients, he seemed almost boastful. To prosecutors, these communications were admissions of guilt. And yet, in the midst of this mountain of evidence, questions remained. What precisely motivated Robinson? Was it ideology, mental instability, personal grievance? Was it a desire for notoriety, or a misguided sense of justice? These questions may never be fully answered, but in the courtroom, they will shape the arguments. Defense attorneys painting a picture of instability, prosecutors presenting a narrative of cold, calculated intent. For students at UVU, the memory of that day lingers. The courtyard where Kirk fell is no longer just a public square. It is a crime scene etched into memory. Faculty, staff, and students continue to process the shock. One professor, a former FBI agent turned criminal justice instructor, told his class that this case would become a teaching example. Not just because of the crime itself, but because of the investigative process, the way evidence, mistakes, and forensic science came together to form a narrative. As the case winds its way through the courts, the story of Charlie Kirk's assassination is more than just a headline. It is a collision of politics, security, forensic science, and human frailty. It is a reminder of how one act, one shot, can ripple across a nation. And it is a study in both the limits of planning and the relentless efficiency of modern investigation. In the end, investigators believe Robinson's downfall was his overconfidence. He may have thought his disguise would shield him, that his digital messages would remain private, that his weapon could be stashed and forgotten. But in an era where DNA can be lifted from a towel, where every rooftop is within view of a camera, and where words sent to a friend can be recovered and displayed in court, those assumptions proved fatal. The legacy of this tragedy is still unfolding. For the Kirk family, it is a loss beyond measure. For the students and faculty who witnessed it, it is a trauma that will not easily fade. For investigators, it is a case that demonstrates both the tragedy of violence and the inevitability of justice. And for the nation, it is yet another reminder of the fragile line between political discourse and deadly action. Charlie Kirk's voice was silenced in a courtyard in Utah, but the echoes of that day, the shot, the panic, the investigation, will continue to resonate for years to come.